Welcome back to another tying video. Today we are tying a fly that I call the carrot. It has been, I didn't fish it too much this summer, but probably my #1 fly for the previous 2 years. It's basically an orange paragon, so I'm not going to claim anything too original here. I've heard people call it a fire starter, a butano, an igniter, but I do tie it my own way a little bit, and I call it the carrot because I fish it with a fly that I call the stick. So I like to be fishing the carrot and stick rig. So anyway, this fly is money, so let's get into it. So today I am tying on a Fulling Mill 50-45 size 12 jig hook, and I am using a 3.8mm silver slotted tungsten bead and 10-aught Vivis thread. So I wrap the thread in right behind the bead, and I only want a few wraps. I like to keep my flies nice and thin. Get that locked in there and trim the excess. Now we take a feather from a whiting tailing pack. You guys heard me say this before. If you wanted to be really proper with it, you would probably use Coq de Leon, but in my opinion this is more than good enough. And I like to use, I've also said this before, but I like to use more fibers than most guys. So I'm going to pull out, what is that? It's probably 6 or 7 right there. Most guys are probably using 3, 5 at most. But I just don't think it makes a big difference, and I think it looks better this way. And I've said this before, but it's easy to tie your tails in too long. So underestimate, lay them along the back on the shank of the hook, pinch them with your other hand, and then tie them in on the near side to you, so that then they'll roll over the top. And nice touching wraps forward, fitting them right into the slot on that slotted bead. I gave it one extra wrap there. Trim off the excess, and then touching wraps all the way back down the shank. So right now, the trick to this, it's actually pretty easy for the fibers to slide off onto that side. So you got to hold them nice and tight along the top of the shank. And now I have only one layer of thread going down the shank. And let's see, 1, 2, 3 layers of thread at the head of the fly. So we're keeping it thin, and run that back to about where the barb would be. Perfect. Now here's where I'm tying this a little different from most guys. I'm taking some orange Vivis quill body, and most guys would just use this as their thread and just wrap that forward, but that's not what we're going to do. We're going to pull off a decent chunk, snip it off. That's definitely more than I need, but I like to overestimate, especially since I'm tying this one on the camera. I really don't want to mess it up. And then fold that in half. Okay. Now we're going to take a piece of crystal flash and line that up about with the ends. So I've got 3 ends in this finger, 2 of Vivis quill body plus the crystal flash. We're going to trim that so they're all nice and even. Okay, now we're going to take that, lay it across the top of the fly, and give ourselves enough room that it's going to stick out a decent chunk past the bead. So we're going to have something to hold on to and trim. Now wrap that in. 1, 2, 3 forward touching wraps. That'll get it rolled up onto the top. And now pull that tight so it's all aligned along the top of the fly. Perfect. And run touching wraps forward, making sure, hi cat, making sure that you keep those fibers in line along the top of the fly as you go. They're going to want to splay out like this. You can see how they're doing that. And you just tighten them up. And especially the closer to the bead you get, the more they're going to want to turn and get wonky. Nice touching wraps forward. Gonna reach up here, tighten them up again. More wraps forward. Now we're really getting up to the thread, the head of the bead. That's where they really like to get crazy, so you got to get extra mindful. And then wrap them so that they go right into the slot on that bead. And then because I'm tying this fly so thin, the problem that you can have is the bead popping back down the body of the fly. So I like to put in a few more wraps than I need here, just so I can start bulking out the very head of the fly so that that bead's going to stay in place. I'm not going to put in enough yet so that the bead literally stays in place, but just a few extra wraps. I don't know what that was, 5 or 6. And now trim off that excess. Now, this is a nice rotary vise. I mean, not a crazy nice vise, but it has a rotary function. So I'm going to put a 2-turn whip finish in here. 1, 2, bang. Slide this guy over, get my thread out of the way. Okay, now I'm going to take my scissors in here and split, because it was a loop of Vivus, split that loop, and then trim the flash so that it's about even. And this is the trick right here. Now you take all 3 of those strands and twist them together in your fingers. I don't like to twist them too much. And then using the rotary function on the vise, or if you don't have that, just wrapping forward, wrap this forward in nice touching wraps. And I don't like to pull too tight. If you pull really hard on these fibers, it stretches them out and you don't get as much shine in there. So this is where I'm really differing from anybody else that I've seen. But what I like about this is it gets the crystal flash effect throughout the whole body of the fly without having any kind of segmentation in there. And this is really going to shine super bright in the river. And my favorite hotspot color, my favorite trout triggering color is orange. And this is going to be as orange as you can get. So it's wrapped up to the bead. And finish it so that it's wrapped along the top, so that when you tie it off, those threads are going to go into the slot on the bead, just like everything else. And that just is going to help keep everything nice and tidy. And again, I'm going to put down some more wraps than I need, just because now we're really getting down towards the end here. I want to lock that bead in place. All right, now let's trim off those extra fibers. With the fibers trimmed off, here is where I just add in some wraps until I feel like the bead isn't going to go anywhere, and you can just test that. You don't have to push super hard. So now it's locked in, and I'm going to throw in a few whip finishes, and that's going to add even a little bit more bulk, and it'll be really nice and locked in. So I like to do 2 4-turn finishes, 2, 3, 4, bam, right along the top still, and one more, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sweet. Now that bead isn't going anywhere. Okay, now we start getting to what's going to make this fly look really professional and next level. We're taking our solar res. So this is my resin, my UV Cure resin of choice. Super thin, clear. And we're just going to coat this fly up pretty good. I want a lot of durability out of it. And then once you have that resin over the top of that quill body, you guys, I don't know if you can see that, but it just all like blends together and it's just so vivid and shiny. And it's just going to light up the river on a sunny day. And I really like to focus on the head of the fly. That's going to help the durability a lot. Keep the bead locked in there, keep those whip finishes solid, and then I stick some down into the slot on that bead. Just really get things as tightened up as I can. And we're going to hit that with the UV light. And I like to make sure it gets down the bead, and I like to shine it up through the eye, the hole where the eye of the hook is coming out. Just really make sure I've covered all my bases. I don't know if you guys can see how much that just lights up, but that is awesome right there. And we've got 1 or 2 steps, we'll call it 1 step to go. Now this final step is what's going to take this fly to the next level and make it look really professional. And to be honest, I don't think it's necessary for the actual functioning of the fly. And if I was tying this fly for myself, I go through tons of these, I fish them a ton, so that means I lose them a ton. I wouldn't bother with this step because it's the most painstaking part, but I'm tying this for a commission, and this is what really makes it look awesome. Speaking of, if you guys want to commission some of these, if you don't tie, or even if you do and you just want some from my hands, my email is in my bio. So, I'm taking some Gulf black resin. This stuff is a pain to work with, I'll be honest. It's pretty difficult. So, open that up, and you really need to be careful with it. Because, I just bumped the camera, let me just double check that's still focused. Sweet. You don't want to inhale this stuff. It's never messed me up that bad, but I've heard stories from a lot of guys that it has. So, I've got a pin, Gulf resin, I squeeze it so that I can see it coming out and dip my pin down in there and get a nice little dot on there. Now I've played around with other black resins and they just haven't done the trick for me. This is the only one that I've really loved. Okay, little dot. The surface tension on this stuff is awesome. So you just have to dab it on there and then it's gonna form into the dot perfectly. You're dabbing it into that, oh, just gonna wipe a little bit off there, into the slot on the bead. Okay, that looks good. I'm gonna add a little more, but first I'm gonna hit this with the light because this stuff, dark black like that, I don't have the biggest flashlight. It's hard to get it solidified throughout the whole thing. So that's gonna be my first layer. Hit it with the light, hit it through the eye of the bead. Now I'm gonna add one more touch of this. Right on top of that, maybe down onto the thread, just the tiniest little bit. Wipe a little bit of that off. Awesome. Okay, that looks great. I'm going to hit that with the UV one more time. And then even this, it's still going to be a little bit squishy. So what I like to do, I take my Solarez again and just gently dab that over the top of the Gulf. And that is what's going to make this really durable and really work well. Nice. Okay, we've got that on there. Hit that with the light one more time. Now we've got a badass fly. There it is from the top, all around. Sweet. That is going to catch a ton of fish, and this is a very durable fly. I would fully expect to be able to catch 50 to 100 fish on this before it wears out. I think that's awesome durability. So, yeah, tie them up, fish them, have a good time, and don't forget to like and subscribe. New videos every Monday, plus oftentimes there'll be tying videos or other auxiliary stuff on Thursdays. So, I'll catch y'all in the next one.